Hi everyone, welcome back to the Facts of Life lecture series. We are now on lecture 5.1. So we're rounding out our discussion of ecology to talk about ecosystem processes. And this figure here just shows a lot of those processes, and you'll notice that they include both the abiotic and biotic components of the environment. And that's really important to this level of ecology. So if we go back to our levels of ecological organization, we're right here at the ecosystem level. So it's biological communities that occur in a constrained geographic region together with the physical and chemical components of the local environment. So we're taking those communities and looking at how they interact with their environment. And so you'll remember from the last module, we talked about how abiotic factors and conditions can really set the stage for what organisms can persist. But what I didn't mention to you is that that biotic community can in turn feedback to influence those abiotic conditions. And a lot of what we study in ecosystem ecology is really about that feedback. So the first ecosystem process I want you to be aware of is net primary productivity, or NPP. It really forms the basis for most ecosystems on the planet. So across different biomes, plants convert chemical energy from the sun into edible energy in the form of food. And that's what photosynthesis is. And because, as I said, plants form the base of most of these food webs, are considered primary producers. And global energy production is called gross primary productivity. So the total amount of energy produced by plants on the planet is gross primary productivity. But of course, those plants need to use some of that energy for their own metabolism. And the remaining energy available to support all of the other organisms in these ecosystems is called net primary productivity, or NPP. And NPP is something that we talk about a lot in ecosystem ecology as really forming the basis of being able to support diverse communities. And because it includes abiotic inputs like sunlight and abiotic outputs like energy, in addition to biotic components of ecosystems, meaning plants, NPP is considered an ecosystem level trait. So the next thing I want you to think about is decomposition, which is closely related in the way that we think about um, how the materials to create primary productivity are recycled in a community. So ecosystems depend on the nutrients that are released when detritivores break down dead organic matter. So you can imagine in a system where everything that every nutrient that is used by a plant or other organism is locked away in that organism would be a very simple community indeed, an ecosystem indeed, because we wouldn't be able to reuse those resources. So we have a series of decomposers, and some of them break down organic matter into smaller pieces, and that allows others to digest it and to have chemical processes happen within the soil. And um, this picture is showing plant material that gets decomposed, which certainly happens. But I think it's important to note that decomposers process matter, other matter as well. That includes dead animal bodies, feces, and human-made waste products. So our feces, but also things like our plastics. So here's the cycle. A tree grows in soil. The roots are down there, right? um, and it produces these green leaves that sometimes fall to the ground. Some of that plant material is eaten by insects or other animals, and it leaves into those food webs that we talked about in the last module. Other nutrients are processed while they lay in the soil ground by things like fungi and bacteria, and some nutrients just through the chemical processes of things like diffusion can leach into the soil. So we end up with this organic rich soil. We call it organic rich because it's nutrients from living organisms that are supplementing the soil. So once it's in the soil, it can be further decomposed by soil organisms. And so we have this cycle where then you have this organic rich soil that is able to be used by the plant to create more leaves that can then collect sunlight and turn it into food for the rest of the ecosystem. Okay, so now as we get into understanding ecosystem science, it's not just the processing of light and nutrients, but also how those abiotic components of the environment interact with the biotic components of the environment. And that leads us to diversity productivity relationships, which are simply they refer to the influence of species diversity on productivity and resilience of entire ecosystems. So early on, when people were thinking about these relationships, they had some ideas about theoretically how they could play out. So if we look at diversity on the x-axis and any given ecosystem process, whether it's NPP or resilience or other ecosystem processes, nutrient cycling, they could play out in different ways. So if we put a little lollipop here where we have our current diversity, what happens if that diversity declines? One option is as you add more species, you just get greater ecosystem productivity. So that's a linear hypothesis. Another hypothesis is the keystone hypothesis. That's the idea that there's particular species that are critical to ecosystem processes. So if we look at our current level and we start to lose species, the more species we lose, the more likely we are to lose the species that are keystone and lead to a crash in that ecosystem process. Then we have redundancy. This is kind of the insurance hypothesis. So if we look at our lollipop here where our current levels are, if we start to lose species, lose a couple species, a few species, it doesn't have a major effect on ecosystem processes until we lose a lot of species. And that's because you have species in the community that are able to, well, basically we have redundancy. So we have multiple species that are able to perform ecosystem processes. And so losing one species isn't going to cause the entire ecosystem to crash. The final idea was kind of like the ramping disturbances idea from the last module, which is if you lose species, then you get a lower level of productivity. And as you lose more species, you get these drops. But there's drops and leveling off and drops and leveling off. Okay, so what do we actually, well, let me tell you this first. In the 1980s and 90s, many researchers, including David Tillman, who we talked about in the population ecology module, became interested in this relationship between net primary productivity or ecosystem stability to the diversity of communities in entire ecosystems. They hypothesized that more diverse ecosystems would have higher insurance against the loss of individual species, and thus they would have higher resilience. More resilient communities would have higher ecosystem productivity. So that's this redundancy hypothesis. And so Tillman et al., in addition to other people, set up these long-term experimental plots. They've been replicated globally at this stage. And in these experiments, researchers manipulate plant richness, but they keep abundance constant. So the idea here is that we're looking at a diversity effect, not just a number of individuals effect. And then they tracked net primary productivity, ecosystem stability, and resilience over time. And this is just, this is just one figure showing their results, which is looking at plant species richness on the x-axis and the total number of plant cover, which is going to be an important factor in net primary productivity. So the more leaves you have, the more solar energy you can collect and transform into food via photosynthesis. And so what they find is pretty good support for that redundancy or diversity insurance hypothesis. But diversity isn't the only ecological factor that influences net primary productivity and other measures of ecosystem processes. So we have above ground mutualists that include pollinators, ants, and plant protection, mutualism, seed dispersers. All those mutualist beneficial reactions can increase the survival and reproductive output of plants. So that's going to increase NPP. We have also above ground antagonists. Herbivores, seed predators, competitors can all reduce plant biomass, and so we have less leaf material to collect sunlight. We're going to have lower NPP. Although it's worth noting that in some systems, there's actually this thing called compensatory growth. So if an herbivore eats a leaf, the plant actually grows more leaves to compensate, and so you have greater NPP. And then we also have below ground mutualists and antagonists. So we have things like mycorrhizae that are fungi that associate with plant roots. Nitrogen fixing bacteria tend to be in nodules where they make nitrogen into forms that can be used by plants. And microbial pathogens can all increase or decrease plant biomass and survival. And that's all going to influence NPP and other ecosystem processes. But the important thing to note is that all of these interactions depend on abiotic conditions, and plant cover feeds back to influence those abiotic conditions. So, so this is kind of the epitome of an ecosystem level trait to look at. Okay, that's all I have for this lecture. Please use the discussions tab of Canvas to ask any general questions you have. As always, I'll be available in my WebEx room during my office hours, but you can always email me if you want to meet another time. And, use that discussions tab to talk to each other. I'll talk to you soon.